Hello and welcome to Recovery Cave. My name's Christian, and today I'm going to be giving you an overview of some of the help and support that's available for your recovery. Now, the aim here is to give you an introduction to some of the options out there. It's not to tell you which one I think's best or which one might be right for you. Recovery is a little bit different for everybody, and what might work brilliantly for one person might not be a great fit for someone else. I'll let you know which approaches I have personal experience of and professional experience of, and which ones I don't. And my own recovery has involved several different forms of support over the years, but I'm going to get into that in a lot more detail when I tell you my full story, which I will be doing very soon. And this video links in heavily with the final ingredient of last week's video, connection. And all of the different forms of help that I'm going to discuss today involves some form of connection. And that means, at the very least, that you don't have to face any of this alone. Around the world, there are professional services that specialize in helping people with addiction. Now, the exact funding and structure vary from country to country. Some will be free, some are funded through healthcare systems, charities, or private providers. In the UK, these are normally referred to as community drug and alcohol services. Now, I use these as a service user, I volunteered within them, and I later worked within them as well. And I'll give you a brief overview of the UK model, which should have a fair few parallels with other systems around the globe. So, these services can offer one-to-one support, recovery planning, groups, detox referrals, rehab referrals, and links to other forms of support. Now, everyone working within these organizations will have a good working knowledge of addiction, and many of the people working there will also have personal experience of addiction themselves. And I was initially referred through to community services during my first stay in hospital for a medical detox, and that was via an alcohol liaison, which was a role I later did myself as well. And that was the first time that I really accepted an offer of help. And there was a long, long way for me to go still. But looking back, that was one of many very important steps for me along the way. Now, there are loads of mutual aid groups out there, but today I'm going to focus on just three of the biggest ones. Now, just because they're the biggest, it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be the best fit for you, but it does mean that they've been a very good fit for a lot of people. And it also means that they're the most accessible, and they are AA, NA, and Smart Recovery. AA and NA are the two largest 12-step fellowships. AA stands for Alcoholics Anonymous, and NA stands for Narcotics Anonymous. As the name suggests, AA focuses on alcohol, NA focuses more on drugs, but the two organisations share a very similar structure. They're both based around physical or online meetings. Now, these are structured, but they're entirely peer-led. They follow a 12-step program. So this is like an overall structure for their recovery model. They encourage sponsors. So a sponsor is someone who has been through the 12-step program, has been clean and sober for some time, and they guide you through the steps. People stick around. Now, this sets AA and NA apart from most self help groups. A lot of people will continue attending AA and NA meetings when they're 10, 20, 30 years clean or sober. And that means there can be a lot of experience and wisdom in any given meeting. And you need to identify as an addict or alcoholic. Now, if you don't, or you're not comfortable with it, then these are basically a non starter. AA has a presence in around 180 countries worldwide, and there are well over 100,000 groups. NA is also a massive fellowship with tens of thousands of meetings every week. Despite this, I have found over the years that most people don't know what they're about. And to be fair, for most of my life, I didn't either. I actually spent quite a lot of time finding ways to discredit AA or reasons why it wouldn't work for me. And despite this, it actually became the backbone of my recovery eventually. And I'll be making at least a couple of videos dedicated to AA in the future because there's a lot more to cover than I can do here. Now, I don't have any personal or professional experience of smart recovery. I remember looking into it vaguely at the start of my recovery, and for me, it looked like a good fit on paper at least. And smart recovery takes a very different approach to AA and NA. It uses a secular evidence based program that focuses on practical tools and techniques for managing addictive behaviors. It draws heavily from psychology, particularly CBT, so cognitive behavioral therapy. And the meetings tend to be more discussion and tool focused than the traditional 12-step meetings. So, those are the three that you are most likely to come across. As I say, there are many other options out there. They're just not as well represented. And it means that a lot of the meetings would be held online. And that is a definite advantage that AA and NA have because you're way more likely to be able to find a physical meeting near to you. And for a lot of people, the physical connection in recovery brings an extra depth with it. Now, a lot of people engage with therapy or counselling in recovery. And while it doesn't necessarily facilitate recovery by itself, it can be very useful for helping you to deal with some of the problems, issues, or traumas that you might have been using alcohol and drugs to run and hide from. Now, this means it can be a process that can dredge up some emotions and feelings and thoughts that are very, very difficult to deal with. And although the professional will be well aware of this, it's worth making sure, or as sure as you can, that your recovery is relatively stable before thinking about going into one of these options. And here are some of the types of therapy that you could look into: talking therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, trauma therapy, or grief therapy. I went to therapy for several months in early recovery. Now, I remember in early recovery, it felt like I was stood on a single paving slab in the void of space, and I couldn't take a step forward because there was nothing there to step onto. And for me, therapy helped me start building a world gradually around that single paving slab, and then started helping me to make a plan to move forward within it. Now, you might think that private rehabs are exclusively attended by the rich and famous when they've gone off the rails. And that's what I used to think. And then I wound up in one for 4 weeks. And when I was there wasn't even one vaguely famous person in there. But I was in there with someone that went to rehab previously with Paul Gascoigne and played chess with him. Now, private rehabs are not cheap. My stay was over 10 years ago now, and back then it cost my parents over £10,000 that they had to borrow. And I will tell that full story of my experience in private rehab in another video. But for now, here's roughly what you can expect for your money. So you'd likely get an allocated therapist. So they do your one-to-ones and oversee your overall stay. A team of addiction therapists. They'll facilitate the groups and are available to speak to between different activities. There'll be individual learning tasks. These will be specifically tailored to what the therapists see as particular problem areas for you. And you'll get full board. That might seem like a strange addition to the list, but part of what you're paying for is the roof over your head, a shower, and 3 meals a day. And rehab is sometimes the nuclear option for those that can afford it. But the high price tag doesn't come with any guarantee of success. I mean, far from it. I remember being in rehab and one of the therapists saying, when you leave here, most of you will relapse. And most of us did, me included. A lot of people, in fact, most people I know in recovery have never been to a private rehab. And some people will go multiple times to a private rehab and never get properly into recovery. Friends and family are unlikely to be the main driver of your recovery. And that's because unless you've experienced addiction, it can be incredibly difficult to get your head around. And no one teaches you this stuff in schools. But I mention them here because they can still potentially play a pivotal role in your recovery. Now, this would ideally mean effort made by both sides. So the family member would do their best to try and learn and understand more about addiction and recovery. And the addict would do their best to try and empathize with what the family member has been going through because of their addiction. They might have been going through their own version of hell. And when you hopefully both come out the other side, trying to understand each other's positions with openness and honesty can make a really big difference. It's not about trying to be on exactly the same page, because that's really unlikely, but it's trying to get as close as you can be to being on the same page. Family dynamics in early recovery can be really important, and I'll be taking a deeper look into those dynamics and how to navigate them in future videos. And not everyone gets supportive family and friends. I was very lucky that my parents continued to support me throughout my addiction, but I've seen children disown parents and parents disown children because addiction is so powerful and so destructive that it can break even the strongest of bonds. And sometimes in recovery, those relationships can be repaired. Sometimes they can't. But it's important to realize and recognize that addiction doesn't only affect the addict, it affects the entire family. And the entire family can make a big difference in the recovery as well. So, recovery is way more about doing than it is about learning or knowing. Although it is very useful to learn and know what to do in the first place. And there are lots of different ways that you can broaden or strengthen your recovery in addition to what we've already talked about. And that's what Recovery Cave is about. Although my ego would love to believe that all you need is Recovery Cave and a bag of enthusiasm, The reality is more likely to be that this channel will act as a supplement or a guide for your recovery. And there are lots of other ways you can do this as well. And I have put them into 5 broad categories. Learning. This could include reading books, listening to podcasts, or watching YouTube videos, very much including this channel. Reflection. Journaling can be very powerful, or you could work on values or goal setting. Psychology. So you could do your own work on things like CBT, or acceptance and commitment therapy, or emotional regulation. Physical well-being. So exercise, going for walks, doing yoga, playing sports. And creativity. That could be making music, doing art, writing, or gardening. All of those things can help fill in the gaps in your recovery and make your life feel more whole. Because recovery isn't just about taking drugs or alcohol out of your life, it's about putting new, wholesome, fulfilling things into it. So, in summary, today's video provided an overview of what help is out there, which will have hopefully been some food for thought. And as I've mentioned a few times, I'll be doing deeper dives into many of those areas in future videos. And some people will just focus on one of the approaches. Some will utilize many, and some will use all of them at some point in their recovery. The important thing isn't finding the perfect option, it's taking the first step, keeping an open mind, and continuing to move forward. And next week's video will be part 1 of my personal story, where I will be taking you deep into my pre-recovery world. So if you don't want to miss that, subscribe to the channel. And if you found this video helpful, as always, feel free to share it with anyone else you think it might help. And if you've liked the video, if you could express that using the like button, that would also be really appreciated. So until next time, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon.